To the Philadelphia situation, because Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer reporting that Sixers ownership is split on what to do with former #1 pick Markelle Fultz. Apparently, some within the organization are most worried about Fultz blooming into the star they thought he was on draft night on a different team, so they don't want to give up on him yet. But if they do decide to trade Fultz, their asking price is a first-round pick. Kevin, which side would you be on if you were their front office? You've spent a ton of time in Philadelphia, so you are very familiar with this situation.
I mean, look, first of all, these splits aren't unusual. I mean, think of a team's brass as the Supreme Court. They're concurring opinions, they're dissenting opinions. That's no scandal. I think right now what they need to do is assign what is the value of Markelle Fultz to the franchise. You have to forget about he was our #1 pick. That is a sunk cost.
Right.
He is a player on their roster with some developmental issues who has great potential. And I think the question is, you know, like the other 29 teams, the question is, would we take Fultz with the draft pick that we would be surrendering?
Right.
So if you're the Phoenix Suns and you have the Bucks pick, now it's probably not going to be conveyed this year, but maybe next year it's a 23rd or 24th. Would you take Markelle Fultz, everything you know about him, his contract, which is a rookie deal, with a pick might get you an inferior player? And I think there are some of these younger teams. Now, first-round pick, no, only in the sense that I think a lot of the teams that be candidates for Fultz, who by definition right now are lousy, probably are more 31st, 32nd, 33rd, 34th pick. But I think getting serious about assessing his value to the franchise is imperative before much more time goes on. And that's what's going on right now.
Clearly have to come to agreement. What side of the fence would you be on if you were making this decision?
I wouldn't do it. Really? I had a story last week on a guy named Ben Uzo who had the same ailment that Fultz had. And basically, imagine playing basketball and losing the feeling in your shooting arm. That's essentially what happened to him. Uzo is not in the NBA anymore. He's still playing for Nigeria's national team and is finding success. He's finding ways to get better. He wants to talk to Markelle. Maybe he's talked to him already. I think that the Sixers need to figure out whatever he did, because it was successful, and bring it to this kid. Right. This is a kid. This is a young player. They got time. You know, try to rehab him, and perhaps giving up on him could be a mistake.
I do agree. I mean, I think the way you say that about it's a sunken cost, I do think that's important to remember. I have a friend who would buy something to eat, and it would cost a decent amount, right? And then it would be crappy or spoiled, and they would be like, oh, I got to eat it anyway. I spent a lot of money. I'm like, no, then you're also spending money and giving yourself a stomach ache. It's the same idea. You can't just force yourself because you spent that first round, that #1 overall pick. That being said, I do worry about the cost to the franchise, just the bandwidth. When we were with the Sixers earlier this month, what I heard from people in the franchise is, man, for a kid who doesn't play that much, he has taken up a lot of everyone's bandwidth, a lot of energy for the coaches, for the other players to have to talk about and think about and worry about. So I don't think just letting him sit has no cost. It's just how much can you bear the cost to then decide to try to keep
It's a real emotional conflict for them because he is beloved.
The guys in the locker room love him. We talk about that on the show all the time.
And at the same time, look, every organization has these series of issues and to-do list things and situations to manage, right, that are difficult. A player who's not happy, a player who is on the last year's contract. And this is a situation that requires, as you say, bandwidth. Like, you know, he is a #1, 2, or 3 issue for that franchise. And, you know, again, it is something that needs to be managed. His expectations, the expectations of his coaches, the expectations of his teammates.
But the risk reward, you trade him, what are you going to get?
Well, that's the question.
You're going to get,
the answer is,
they want a first, it's going to be the Warriors first.
Right.
It's going to be the Raptors first. It ain't going to be a good first. But if you take the time to rehab this kid, now he knows what he has. What if he goes somewhere else and becomes what they expect him to be? He'll look bad.